my first paycheck wasn't even anything astronomical. Hi, I'm Rita and you're watching Reflective Revival. So today I'm going to be sharing what my first job has taught me, and there's 3 specific things I want to cover in this video. But first, I'm going to talk about what exactly was my first job, what was the position, how did I get it, and how much I was paid. So my first job was actually my work-study placement in my first year of college. So work-study, the way it works is it's part of your financial aid package when you fill out your FAFSA for getting some type of financial aid to the university or the college that you're attending. So part of it was getting aid through working on campus, and that was how I got my first job. And what was my first job? My first job was I was an usher at my university's auditorium, so where they host all types of events where you need a stage. Basically, it's like our theater slash auditorium. But if you've been to a play or you've been to a dance performance where there's a stage and there's like seats that look like you're in a theater, then that's hopefully the description that covers where I was working specifically. And so as an usher, my main job was that I guided customers or patrons to their seats by scanning their ticket, helping them get to the right seat before the start of the show, and then any noise disturbances or questions from patrons that come up, I assist them. So how much I was getting paid? So I was getting paid $9 an hour. Now that sounds a lot to some people, but the thing was I wasn't getting enough hours, and so I'm going to share a little funny story about how that worked. So because I only worked when there was an event and I was actually scheduled for that event, so that would be called my shift, that was only when I got paid. So my first paycheck I think was actually less than $40. I think it was $36, because when I worked in the month of September, which is when school started, and I think I worked one shift in that entire month, I got paid like less than $40 because I only worked for like 4 hours. Now that was my first paycheck, and I laugh at it because like my first paycheck wasn't even anything astronomical in the amount. And you know, typically when you're like, yeah, I'm employed, I'm working, you're like super excited because you're gonna get your first paycheck. When I got my first paycheck, I was like, wow, less than $50. And I ended up just using that money to pay off my phone bill. That being said, what I did was I tried to sign up for as many shifts as I could. So I tried to sign up for at least one shift a week, so one event a week. But like I said, it really depended on when the auditorium was booked for an event. And typically they only started getting busy during Christmas season, because we have kind of like a recurring event that happens every year, which is like this Nutcracker show. But that was when we got the most hours, and I probably hit 10 hours, 15 hours. So if you could guess, and I made more money. But yeah, that aside, that was how like my paycheck looked for my first job. Customer service was one of the big things I learned from my first job. I learned what it's like to be on the other side of the table of providing the service rather than receiving service. And I have more respect and perspective with those who are providing customer service in whatever capacity, in whatever industry, whether that be in retail, in food and beverage. It is definitely not an easy job, and being an usher, it required for me to stand a lot and smile. In American culture, customer service includes smiling at your customer like this, and to be on all the time and super like happy, even though I had some really crappy customers or patrons. But really, when I look back, I don't remember those crappy patrons as much because I don't let that affect me. But when we do have an event with dance moms, especially, I will say experience, like we would have sometime in the year we would have like dance events for the youth, and there's something called Dance Moms. I'm pretty sure there's a show, I've watched it. Dance moms can be a little uptight or a little crazy, but yeah, some, like I probably had encounters where they just came up to me and just wanted me to answer their every question, even though some of the questions they had weren't necessarily part of my job. So, like I said, working in customer service, I got a better idea of what it's like to be more patient, and understanding of my customer's concern. And also, as a customer myself, when I would go into a store or to a restaurant or anywhere in the capacity where I am receiving customer service, I try to be more patient and understanding. And if I did have like a customer issue or something like that where I was expressing frustration, I try not to express my frustration directly to the person providing customer service, because at the end of the day, life happens, crap happens, and systems malfunction, things were miscommunicated, and the best thing you could do right now is just try to solve it and, you know, have a conversation with the person providing service. The second thing that my first job taught me was what it's like to work in team environments, where I've had coworkers who weren't exactly doing their job, and sometimes I've experienced or I've seen where they have favoritism, like the managers favorite them, but basically where my job required me to stand for the entire event even when the doors were closed, so there was no like patrons walking around seeing me like sitting down. There were times where, you know, standing wasn't always the easiest, because just keep in mind that, like I said, I'm not working like a job like as a barista where I'm standing like 8 hours a day for 5 days or 7 days, so like your body gets used to it. I'm only working like a handful of shifts for like a handful of hours, for like 4 hours, like maybe twice a month, maybe 3, maybe 4 times a month, and they're sporadic, so they're not every day. And again, like I'm a student, so there are times where, you know, like you're just mentally drained and maybe even physically drained, and there are times where I just needed to take a seat. But anyways, I noticed that my manager, or the person who was directing us throughout throughout that event, like supervising us as in the fellow ushers working that night, would favorite like a few students that's probably like returning to that job, so they worked that job before. And it was sometimes frustrating because, like, you know, like I'm a person too, like I'm working as hard, if not more than this person returning, and I really want to do a good job. It was my first job, and I really wanted to make a good impression to my manager and to my coworkers, you know, to be fair to them. And I was just being treated like, in those moments I just felt like, why am I working here? And so I did have to realize that you are also going to have those types of situations where you just see that you're not always treated fairly. And then also you will realize too, what is your working style in these teams, and what is your like ideal like manager that you want to have on your team. Because when you have a good manager, it's such a blessing to have, because you enjoy work more and you just feel like you have a good mentor and a good direction in your job. And so even though like I said, it's not a job that's like a job that I wanted to do forever, at the time I did wanted to have that job for like the rest of college. But unfortunately, because like I said, it was my first job, I did leave the position. That's a great segue to the third thing that my job has taught me. So I learned from that job that even though I was placed in sometimes pretty stressful situations, or situations where I wasn't the most comfortable, because like I said, it's my first job, and like having to be in a customer service role and deal with some team situations where I just didn't feel like I was being treated fairly sometimes, I realized that I could walk away from that job. And I had that privilege because like I wasn't working to put myself through school. I was working just so that I can have some spending money and experience what it's like to work. So the third lesson in clear words was that you can walk away from your job if it's not working with your schedule, it's draining your mental health or your happiness, like you're not coming to work excited to like work. Like if you're in a customer service role, you should at least be 100% ready to just be on. And then last but not least, if it's holding you back, like if you feel like there's another opportunity, whether it be a job or something you'd rather spend your time doing, then I say go for it. Go do what you think you want to do. Like I left with grace. I wrote my manager letter of resignation, gave them like a week's notice. Like I felt like it was the right time when I quit. I didn't quit like oh, I'm just gonna drop and like quit. I quit when I realized that they were not gonna have any more like shifts for the summer. I was like, okay, well, this is kind of like a good progression for me to quit the job so I can find a job that's more stable and can give me more hours. So yeah, I didn't quit my job on a bad note. I felt like on the progression of how the shifts were working and just me realizing like I don't think this job is just for me, that was when I quit the job. So that concludes this video. I hope you found this very helpful, especially as you navigate your first job or finding your first job, and any experiences or lessons that you've learned or have had with your job. Please feel free to share with me. I'm super excited to hear from people what their first job taught them. And yeah, it will be really exciting because I've always wanted to share this as part of my professional development, that it really started with maybe not the best of all jobs and maybe not your dream job. So maybe be a little realistic with the fact that you're not gonna have your like dream job as your first job, but maybe you'll have your first job teach you a very valuable lesson or lessons. And yeah, hope this is helpful, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.